Kevin Gordon here with your January 16th edition of the Afternoon Commute. Today I wanted to talk through some of the top 10 lists from 2011. Both the worst and the best-selling cars for last year. So I thought it was a reasonably interesting grouping of both cars, and also because I think it's quite amazing at how few of the least cars that are sold are sold. So starting off at number 10, the forgetful and slightly ugly Subaru Tribeca sold only 2,700 units last year. Not really surprised. It's not what Subaru does. I'll be interested to see if they even continue forward making them. On to number 9, the Mazda Tribute, Ford Escape clone SUV. Understandable. It's not why people go to Mazda. Still, it's a very few number of cars. In at number 8, the Mercedes-Benz R-Class. And for those of you who aren't aware, the R-Class is the minivan-looking Mercedes, which sadly was available as an AMG model. In my opinion, if they had just bothered to put the sliding doors on it like a minivan, I think it would have been more successful. The problem is the, R-Class, and when they made the Chrysler Pacifica, which was fundamentally the same thing, somehow Chrysler got smart enough to stop selling it. But Mercedes carries on with even in a refreshed version, I believe last year. The problem is the rear doors are so big, it's like driving a coupe, but in the second row. So if you've got little kids, they're just going to take that thing and smash it into every poor SOB who's parked next to you in the mall. Before we go on, I do want to point out that this list is from autoblog.com, and the way they compiled it was to take out anything that was more than $100,000 or would be expected to sell in extremely low volume. Moving on, number 7 was the Suzuki Equator, which is their small SUV, which is actually a very nice car, but Suzuki's got such a small dealer network. It's understandable why it sold only 2,100 cars last year. Number 6, the Cadillac Escalade EXT. They're counting the EXT as a separate standalone unit. If you include it with the Escalade, obviously it was one of the better selling cars of last year, but still a reasonably rare thing. Number 5, the Toyota Land Cruiser. The Land Cruiser sold 1,662 cars last year. That's an exclusive number for a car that, in all honesty, I think I see quite a few of. Number 4, the Acura ZDX. The Acura SUV coupe didn't sell very well, and I think sort of as expected. It's a pretty unique looking thing. It's not all that utilitarian, but it does look a lot like its concept when it came out, and you sort of have to give Acura some credit for building something so un-vanilla in the rest of, when the rest of their line is, let's face it, sort of as bland as it is. Number 3, the Mitsubishi Lancer Sportback. Right, Sportback. It's the wagon hatchback version of the Lancer, again counted on its own, so it didn't sell very many. Number 2, the Hyundai Azera. I wasn't even aware they were still selling the Hyundai Azera. Given all of the rest of Hyundai's sales success, it's kind of amazing that they only sold 1,542 of them. And in at number 1, the least sold car for 2011, the Acura RL. So the big Acura sold only 1,096 units. That's amazingly small numbers. It's actually incredible that Acura continues to sell that car. And I was trying to figure out something for comparison. So, what is 1,000 units sold on an annual basis really mean? And you can do it by population or all the other things. But instead, I found out that the Mercedes-Benz SLS AMG, So the gull-wing door Halo supercar, since it's been being built, has sold 5,000 units. Now that is worldwide, but still. So they've sold 5,000 of those, and they only sold 1,000 Acura RLs last year. So if you want exclusivity, go buy an Acura RL while they're still available. And moving on to the top 10 list, because what good would a bottom of the barrel list be without the top? So coming in at number 10, the Chevrolet Cruze sold 232,000 units. So that's the 10th best-selling car, sold 232,000. That also includes Chevy Cobalt numbers from the stock that was still available of those as they went through. That's what allowed it to squeak into the top 10. Next up, number 9, the Toyota Corolla Toyota Matrix combined into one vehicle sold 240,000 boxes of beige to people that after they left the dealership were a little less happy than they were when they got there. Number 8, the Ram pickup. Now remember, it's no longer the Dodge Ram pickup, just the Ram. So the Ram sold how many? 244,000 versions of itself last year. A pretty successful number for a standalone brand in some ways. It's true they might still sell the Dakota, but they don't really sell many of those. I was almost surprised not to see that on the least selling list. In at number 7 on the best-selling cars, the Ford Fusion. So that aging platform of a car still managed to be number 7. 248,000 times people signed up for a new Ford Fusion. Number 6, the Honda Accord / Accord Cross Tour. And considering the fact they probably sold about 6 Cross Tours, the Accord is still doing well, but it is significantly down on where it was last year. Now, part of that could be blamed on the fact that there were some production problems due to the tsunami, but let's face it, it's more likely due to the fact that the Sonata Kia Optima have started to eat into its sales. And now for the top 5, coming in at number 5, the Ford Escape. I have to be honest, I was shocked when I read that. I mean, the Escape is a fine little SUV, but it's fundamentally been the same thing for the last 42 years. And last year it was the 13th best-selling car. So somehow it being a year older with not many updates, if any, it jumped up into number 5. So I think what that tells me is between the Fusion and the Escape that's planned to start to come out at some point next year, you can expect to see Ford to have a very nice year in 2012. Coming in at number 4, proof that you can sell continuously variable transmissions in cars, the Nissan Altima. I can picture it now, a bunch of people walking into their local dealership going, what I really, really want is a car that when I step hard on the gas, drones at a really high RPM and slowly moves me forward, but never changes in RPM. I don't really want any of that nonsense shifting stuff. What I want is a nice Nissan Altima. So the Altima in at number 4. Number 3, and your best-selling car of 2011, the Toyota Camry. And I'd like to smash the Camry more than I'm going to, but ultimately it's really not that bad of a car. I mean, sure, and everybody makes fun of it for being a little beige, but with the V6 it could almost be considered sporty. I know its ride and handling aren't exactly there, but it's got some guts and I can't hate it too much. So the Camry sold 305,000 units. Number 2 for 2011, the Chevy Silverado. So Chevy Silverado manages to be number 2, and pardon the pun, like a rock. Can't quite beat the F-150, which of course is your number 1 for the year. And despite an aging platform and less than stellar interiors, the Silverado still sold 415,000 units last year. And no surprise, your number one, and what we're riding in right now, the 2011 Ford F-150. They sold over 500,000 F-150s last year. 100,000 of them were EcoBoosts, which goes to prove that new technology and new things, despite all the traditionals getting nervous about them, will drive sales to the dealership. So there it is, your top 10 best sold for 2011. I bring up the next topic because as I was sitting around the dinner table on Thanksgiving, the subject of the NBA lockout came up. You may wonder, how does this have anything to do with cars? Well, when the NBA was on strike, locked out, not playing, the players weren't getting paid, and I made the joke that Maybach might as well, close up shop because nobody's going to be buying their cars. Well, it wasn't the NBA lockout that did it, but senior officials at Mercedes-Benz did confirm to Auto Week that Maybach would cease to be in 2013. Fundamentally, the Maybach 57 and 62 were not sales successes in any way. Obviously, they were never intended to be high-volume cars, but even with that being said, they didn't come close to meeting sales expectations. So, something you have to figure is going to take their place. And the rumor at this point is the fact that the S-Class Mercedes is going to grow a bunch of derivatives to start to fill the gap. So expect to see in the 2013, 2014 timeline, a much longer wheelbase S-Class, some sort of higher level 600 series, potentially a two-door coupe S-Class, not just a CL, but an actual two-door coupe S-Class and potentially a convertible. So that's your afternoon commute, January 16 edition. If you have any feedback, comments, suggestions, please feel free to leave them below, and I look forward to talking to you guys tomorrow.